LTC Peregrine DadCast. I'm your host, Henry Cameron Allen, and here I've got with me my ever-loving, wonderful co-hosts, Jeff Kamen and Dave Roberts. And we are all peregrines, all three of us. We are veteran peregrines. It's been a few years that we've been navigating this world, and for those that are newly joining us, a peregrine is something that we at the Lost Travelers Club have identified as a word like widow or orphan that identifies a parent who's outlived their child. It's an elegant word, it's genderless, and it's recognized as being native to every continent except Antarctica, where there are no people. And it describes symbolically in almost every culture courage and resilience and strength, which are certainly all things that we need to tap into as peregrines ourselves over time. And our focus here on the DadCast, as the name infers, is that we're talking about men's grief. We're talking about the ins and outs, ups and downs, and perhaps differences between the way that men grieve in general and women. And many, many times what we find is that it's a very individual and solitary journey. We may not all go through the same thing at the same time, in the same way, but there are going to be common threads, and that's what we are here to identify and just share in an organic discussion with whoever's here for co-hosting, what the journey has been like for each of us, and reflecting back on our, for me, it's been 15 years. I know, Jeff, the same. And how long has it been, Dave, now for you?
And it's going to be 21 years in March of 2024.
Yeah, so we're veterans here, and perhaps we have a little wisdom that can help remove the stones out of those who are going through it recently or more recently, or God forbid, those up and coming.
Henry, I think the most important thing that can be said has just been said. 15 years, more than 20 years. We live through this. We survive. We endure. We celebrate the kid we lost by living good lives and sending our love to their spirits by living good and full and joyful lives. That's the best thing we can do when we lose a kid. That's what's on us. That's our responsibility.
And that takes time. You know, it's not something that you can just decide one day that you're going to do. I think that if we have a little more information as we go, or if we meet mentors like you, like Dave, like me and others, that, you know, our authentic striving to find that quality in our grief on the journey effortlessly gives permission to anyone who's searching an opportunity to do the same, or at least seek the tools that work for them. One of the things that has been coming up a lot in conversations that I've been having, I belong to a number of men's grief groups on Facebook, which are wonderful. The question of memories. Memories creep up and dig their claws into our hearts. And that's not something that is necessarily controllable. But I'd like that to be the topic today, because I've heard it repeated a lot lately. And I think the holidays are upon us, and that brings up a lot of memories, both positive and challenging, for peregrines across the board. Dave, do you want to talk about your memories and how you navigate when they creep up, both the positive ones and maybe the challenging ones too?
Well, I think to tell you how I navigate it now, it's important to understand how I didn't navigate it when I was in early grief. And when the memories came up for me, and particularly in early grief, and these were on a variety of different levels. One were memories of the relationship that I had with Janine myself. And then there were also memories that were being created in present time with her daughter and my granddaughter. So you talk, for me, it was like the memories were like a double-edged sword. When my granddaughter would do something that I know is going to create a memory for me down the road, initially it was like it was a reminder of who I had lost. And a lot of people would have said to me really briefly, you got a gift with your granddaughter. I said, well, yeah, I mean, I did. It was a great legacy that Janine left. But at the same time, every time she would do something in early grief, that would bring up memories of who I didn't have. And the memories would kind of like just would kind of paralyze me with sadness, I think, for lack of a better way to put that. It was more, the memories were yearning for what I couldn't have and what I had before and what I couldn't have. But as I got older, in my grief, and as my perspective began to shift with the help of a lot of support and a lot of spiritual mentors, in particular, one that is very near and dear to both of us, Reverend Patty Farino, I was being able to transform the relationship and look at memories as a way that allowed me to connect me with the essence of my daughter and her spirit, as opposed to a reminder of the lack of her physical presence. I still have days where the memories will evoke sadness, but I've learned that grief and sadness can grief, sadness, and happiness can coexist. And I've learned to accept that. I have learned to run with it. I have learned to learn from that. So the memories now, good or bad, usually will have something to teach me or will remind me of the relationship I now have with my daughter. And that's all I got for now.
That's a lot, Dave.
That's a lot, and so eloquently said. I think, I see Jeff nodding his head. I'm nodding my head. Those are the common threads I'm talking about. Even though I don't have grandkids, and never will, it's so good to hear that you're able to channel some of that joy, and create memories that you wouldn't otherwise have had with Janine. And, beautiful.
Well, yeah, and her daughter is now 22 years old, or going to be 22 years old in May, and she has a child of her own, a granddaughter, Tegan Marie. My granddaughter's name is Brianna, and my great-granddaughter is Tegan Marie. Marie is Janine's middle name. But the thing that is also uncanny, but at the same time serendipitous, is that if you talk to my granddaughter, you're talking to my daughter. She's exactly same personality, the same energy, the same sass. And she only bonded with my daughter for 10 months. Now you can explain that as a part through science, maybe through inherited disposition, but I think there's a more sacred explanation for that.
No question.
So, and I would leave that up to our listeners and our viewers to kind of figure out where they align with that. For me, I know what the likeness signifies to me from a sacred perspective, but I'll just leave that up to everybody else to decide what that may mean for them.
Beautiful. Jeff, how about you? How's your memory journey?
I want to emphasize the power of choice that each of us has. Once we get through, at least in my experience, the first year, being compelled into dark spaces or just disconnection spaces, that declines predictably for almost everyone. You make it through the first year or thereabouts, and you rediscover that you really are in charge of what happens inside your inner life. It's not being directed by some outside agency. Exercising choice turned out to be a huge discovery for me, that I could choose how I would use my mind, how I would deal with memories, how I would say to anybody who was around me and asking, hey, what's going on with you? Exactly what was going on with me. So now I have a rather regular relationship, pretty much every other day at least, because that's when I go to the gym. And my son, who was mastering 3 martial arts simultaneously until he discovered alcohol, drops in and says, "Is that all you got? How about one more rep?" And I laugh, and I know it's him for sure, because nobody else in my life would dare say that to me. Because when you're 80 years old, you don't push for the last rep, because recovery from that injury could take forever. But it's sweet stuff now. It's all sweet stuff, except around his birthday, except around the anniversary of when he went off the 19th story balcony in Chicago to his death. Those are moments when the dark shark of associated depression opens its mouth and says, "Here, hop in." And that's when I use my power of discretion, my mind, and make the choice of what to do with my memory. I back up and say, "No, not this time. Matter of fact, not ever. I'm going to embrace the joys that I shared with that kid." So that's how I do my memories these days.
Beautiful. Thank you. You know, over the course of time, over the past decade and a half, one thing that's become sort of laser focus for me is the power of the moment, and that everything that exists in the past and everything that exists in the future only live in our imagination. Even if you share a memory with someone you care about, someone living, for instance, they're going to have a different memory than you do of the moment you shared. It's like if you have a battlefield and someone's watching a battle, call it a sports game. Someone's standing on the south side of the field, other one's standing on the north side, and then someone else on the southwest corner, and someone else on the east side. You're seeing a completely different event. And so to take a pause and reflect back that every experience you have ever had only lives in your imagination of it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, likewise, that gives me the opportunity to consider the future that I want to imagine and envision and the kind of griever I want to be. Ties in, Jeff, to what you were talking about, choice. We have a choice in how we meet grief. We don't always have the tools to know how to manifest that choice, which is why I think the three of us are here, the Sage Three, plus others who have joined us. But I think that it's something that is very individual, and I do believe that that is something that we can choose, the kind of griever as men that we want to be, the kind of men we want to be, because you can't go back and change anything. We've acknowledged and affirmed here many times in previous episodes that acceptance is the first step on the grief journey after the big bang and after the numbness that new morning brings, M-O-U-R-N. But it is a new morning as well, a new M-O-R-N-G for your life. Just like when your child was born, in their passing, you are also never going to be the same as you were. When we have children, we are changed. And a new kind of man is reborn through us. I said in the last episode, I talked about the soul womb of men, that we didn't get to have that experience of a physical womb to gestate and grow a child within us. But now, on the other side of their passing, we have what I can only describe as a soul womb, where we experience many of the same, how I would perceive as a man, perceiving, you know, how a woman might carry a child. I call my morning sickness, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, morning sickness, where you feel nauseous, where you feel triggered, where you feel like you can't breathe. There's something sitting on your chest. that feeling of a life still operating within you, within your body. We feel that kick inside. The pain of it, the wonder of it, the gratitude that we had that experience with them here in the physical, all of that, and the anticipation of birth is not the birth of our child, it's the birth of ourselves with a capital S. It's a
Mm.
and so this is something that I've been rolling around a bit, and starting to share and getting some feedback on, because I think that, you know, this ties in directly to the topic of memory and how to navigate those memories. Because if we are, I hear, like you, Dave, I hear Cameron's voice in my head. Jeff, you described as well, you know, Dad, you know, come on, one more rep. I hear Cameron saying, tell the story about yada yada, right? And so it's through the storytelling that I'm actively reliving and engaging with those positive memories. There are times, like you said, Jeff, like birthdays, holidays, you know, Tuesdays sometimes, where a not so pleasant memory will come up. And those are hard. Those are really hard. There are times.
That's when our management skills have to come in, managing ourselves, managing our minds, and asking ourselves the question, why would I use my mind like that to
Mm,
dive deeper into an open shark mouth that I really can simply dismiss by saying, okay, saw you, goodbye, swim elsewhere, you're not welcome here now.
mhm. And what's the answer for you? What comes back at you when you ask that question?
I don't anymore. I don't allow it. But then again, I have had almost 16 years now
Right.
to process and process and process, and to take more and more responsibility for every aspect of my life, including how I interface with the loss of Nathan, who was 41 years old, who had lived a remarkably diverse life filled with unfulfilled promise, but had some wonderful joys along the way. You don't want to hear Nathan's life story here today, but I will tell you that he was the source of remarkable pride, enormous love, a living example of compassion in a young man, and therefore an inspiring human who, unfortunately, had a genetic predisposition to alcohol, and it destroyed him at age 41, chasing a shot glass off a 19th-story balcony.
Yeah. You know, Cameron used to say, Papa, nobody has an expiration date on the bottom of their foot. None of us knows when we're going to go. None of us knows how we're going to go.
Henry,
And
remind the audience that may be tuning in for the first time how old Cameron was and what your process had been. Remind them.
well,
This
he
was
was,
not like my kid at all. Yours was different.
it is, everyone is like birth and pregnancy. There are common threads, but there are definitely unique qualities to every passing that we experience. And Cameron was 11 when he was diagnosed with anaplastic astrocytoma. That is burned into my brain since the moment I heard it. Anaplastic means that it grows very, very fast. Astrocyte is a star-shaped cell that latches onto everything around it and spreads. And toma is tumor. So he had brain cancer. And it's typically found in men over 55. So random and rare that an 11-year-old child would get it. It sprung up. There are no answers. There are no answers as to why. That for years was frustrating to me, because we as humans, we want answers. We want to know the why. Was it that he was hit in the head with a kickball a few months before? Did that trigger something? This was not a genetic kind of brain cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It was not passed on, you know, from one parent to another, to a child. There are no answers other than Cameron's answer that nobody has an expiration date on the bottom of their foot. And that was simply his time and his way. And it's up to me to navigate my journey and to find ways around the boulders that will rise up. For a long time, for years and years and years, around the, I don't call them anniversaries because I think anniversaries are more celebratory. I call them milestones. The milestone of his passing would bring to life in me the last time I kissed him goodbye.
Mhm.
It was visceral. I could feel it on my lips. And it wasn't long lived. I mean, it was a flash of a memory, but that was really hard because I found myself not able to breathe through those moments. I did
Flat
eventually.
Stanley has arrived behind you.
Yes, look, see, he feels it. This is
Yes, of course.
this is my service dog, Flat
Yes,
Stan.
Flat Stanley. Yes, I've seen
And
numerous
he does
pictures
this
of
when
him.
I'm talking about something emotional. He comes
Oh,
up,
yeah.
he puts his head on my heart, he leans into
Yep.
my chest, and he
Yep.
says, "It's okay, Papa. Here, come here, lie down."
Brilliant.
He's the best, and I urge anybody and everybody to get a service dog because to have been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder was a real saving grace, and that, Jeff, was a choice. I know a great many men and women who are peregrines who have not even considered getting a diagnosis. I don't have PTSD. That's for military personnel. That's for people who've seen the front lines of battle. Well, guess what? Those of us who have seen the front lines of battle, where our children are ripped open, scarred, their beautiful heads and faces with scars and, all that stuff. We've seen the carnage. We are affected by that trauma, and watching them have to crawl out of a toxic well of chemo and radiation. And you can be there with a soft, warm, fluffy towel, right, Dave? You can wrap them up and tell them it's going to be okay, hanging on to hope every minute, but you can't help them climb out of that well.
No.
You
And I don't,
have to do it.
and I don't tell anybody anymore it's going to be okay, because that's not even in my vocabulary anymore, because who the hell knows if it's going to be okay? You can't, it's just basically kind of something that society has said, well, this is what you say when somebody is grieving, tell them it's going to be okay. Well, it's not okay, first of all, because when somebody transitions, your life has changed forever. I mean, and that's with every loss, the landscape of our lives are changed. So it's not okay. It's different, but it's not okay. And we have to learn to accept different. And I also wanted to dovetail back on choice. We do have a choice. I agree with that. We can choose how we choose to do our grief journey or not. Um, and I remember in a blog I wrote a long time ago, I said, catastrophic loss can take much from us, but can never take away our free will. We have the free will to decide how we want to do this or how we not want to do this. The choice is ours. We can wallow in the muck or we can wallow through it. It's that simple.
Yeah, and like I said, in my journey, it's been about breaking through those vortices, vortices of getting caught and sucked down into it. And it doesn't feel like you have a choice. And when you're caught in that moment of panic, like, I can't break through, I cannot break out of this heavy feeling of deepest sadness. If you're breathing, you've broken through. You've gotten through the moment, right? You've gotten to the next moment. And so here we have tools. There are tools available. And each of us here has a full toolkit that we're opening up and sharing. You can't use our tools the way we use them because there are tools that we've crafted based on our own unique journeys, but you can open up your toolkit and you can synthesize some of the things you're hearing us talk about, practical ways of getting through and breaking through that experience of helplessness. That's my worst trigger, by the way. When I feel helpless, That's the worst feeling. So I choose not to feel helpless.
Henry, I want to offer one that works for everybody, and
Yep.
it's fundamental understanding of neuroplasticity and how it works.
Yep.
I'm going to go back to with my most recent set of kids who are now grown young women. When they would come home from school the first time and say, "You know, I can't do this," I would say, "Let's talk about the power of your words." And they would say, "Power? My words? Yeah, your power. Never again say I can't. Instead, say I'm working on this. Can you help me do this better?" And watch what happens, because we know with certainty, we've known since then. I'm talking now, 25 years ago, that when we say something and we believe in the moment, the brain makes another pathway for that. I'll make another pathway for negativity. I'll make another pathway here in the brain where I can't. The moment you say to yourself and actually mean it and learn to live on it, that I'm working on this, I can do it, I'll find a way, it changes everything. I found that works with grieving as well. At least past that first year of unimaginable shock, and for me it was like maybe 8 or 9 months.
Right.
We can take command of ourselves. We are nobody's victim. We are nobody's victim. We take responsibility for every aspect of our lives, and there's a lot of power and a lot of joy that comes from that, and a lot of humility as well.
Yeah. And just to dovetail off of what Jeff said and to kind of elaborate on what I had meant earlier about choice, I think in that first year, I felt disempowered. I was in shock. I felt disempowered. I felt out of control. I felt that my life wasn't in control. But I had to kind of realize the consequences of continued disempowerment for me to choose to empower myself. And once I began to realize that, then I began to move forward. And the other thing is we cannot underestimate the power of the instinct to survive during that first year. I remember, and you've heard me, I don't know if Jeff's heard me mention it, but you've heard me mention Henry Neil Peart, the late great drummer for the rock band Rush, who I believe was the best drummer of my generation and the best lyricist and writer. He experienced some very tragic losses with a wife and daughter within 10 months of each other in the late 90s. And he talked about, he took a 55,000-mile road trip to find himself. And among many of the lessons I learned in that book and teachings that still resonate, is he talked about him, it wasn't a question of him wanting to survive, or a question of him surviving, it was the wanting to survive, it was that inherent need for him to survive. And he talked about keep moving, something will come up. So if we just keep moving to our survival stage, something's going to come up that's going to help us realize that we can be empowered to make the choice to do our journey and to re-engage in life and with acceptance of living in a world that is totally different. But it takes that period of disempowerment, experiencing those consequences before we can take the next step.
I want to say to anybody who is watching or listening right now, who is in the early stages of grief, loss of a child, don't stay alone in a room. Get out, go into the streets, walk around, go have coffee somewhere, interact with people. Look at other people who are the ages of the person you lost and remind yourself that life goes on and you're a part of it. You are a part of it. Look at people your own age in that crowd. They're continuing to live. They're breathing in, they're breathing out. They're going through the joys and sorrows of daily life. They're living their lives. And you will too. You will. And when choice crops up, and you can feel choice starting to crop up after the first 6 months to 9 months, I guess, was my experience, then you take full responsibility for that and watch what happens. Watch what happens. You will come back to who you are, only you'll be transformed into someone even stronger and more capable of loving yourself, being compassionate to yourself, and therefore being more competent in offering compassion to others. It works.
You become a peregrine.
Mm-hmm.
You truly become a peregrine. The peregrine is the fastest animal on the planet. It is so strong. It is resilient. It is also solitary. This is your grief journey. And that doesn't mean that you don't engage with other people and isolate yourself. We do that too. That's part of the journey, is that self-isolation. Men especially, we need to retreat into ourselves to try and figure this shit out. And when we get to the edge of the abyss, we must ask for help. And there is help to be had. Jeff, I know I've heard you talk about when you were in your big bang numbness after it happened, it took somebody saying to you, right? Someone you
Yeah.
trusted, someone you knew, giving you permission in a sense to break through, right?
Oh yeah.
And not everybody has that. And you know, let us be that for you if you haven't found that.
Precisely.
So as we wrap up, this has been another great conversation, gentlemen. Really, thank you. Thank you for being here. It matters. And it helps us to get these thoughts out of our bodies because it's not often that we share publicly these things. And it's a great act of courage and integrity and strength to be able to do this as a way to give permission to other men who feel that there's no one that they can talk to about.
But underline that, Henry. Newbies to this horrible experience, reach out, get help.
Mhm.
Get help, get help. It's a manly thing to do. Get help.
Yeah, I mean, you've said, Jeff, for I don't know how many episodes that we are not hardwired to outlive our children.
No.
But as Dave says, we are, however, hardwired to survive. And that's why the tagline of the Lost Travelers Club, and you can go, there's a whole Peregrine manifesto at the Lost Travel, is surviving parents getting there together. Right? We are surviving. If you're watching this, if you've lived another day, you are surviving. And back to this question of how do I navigate my memories? Lean into them, guys. Lean into your memories. Embrace your memories as sacred. They are sacred spaces. They are not creeping up there to drag you down. They are there to make you stronger. Scar tissue is stronger than intact skin. And your memories are your scar tissue. Honor yourself, honor your children by acknowledging and honoring your scars.
Yep.
And that's how I experience memory. Those are my scars. And I honor them as sacred. And here is a place, a safe place with the Lost Travelers Club, where you can, and the Fellowship of Fathers, where you can share your scars with brother peregrines who have been through it and are going through it every day. I am an internationally certified grief and survival counselor. And if you are struggling to find mental health care at all, but also what I found in my journey of searching for help is that it's rare to find someone who's been through it, who has the skills to counsel. And so we offer that as a free service through the Lost Travelers Club. So please take advantage of that. We are always finding new ways to channel our grief into goodness. That's what we do here. There's, you know, the inherent support that comes with community, but our goal, our mission is really to empower peregrines to channel our grief in positive ways, helpful ways to ourselves and to others that honor the lives of our children and the time that they were here, and to honor one another and ourselves and this sacred journey. You know, in Spanish, I live in Spain, but in other Latin-based languages, peregrine means pilgrim. You're on a sacred journey. It also means, in its original Latin, a stranger in a field. How many of us have felt that way? If you're the only one in the room, right, who really understands it. So that's to say, if you feel like the only one in the room, just know that there's somebody here, there's somebody here, and there's somebody here who are at the ready. And we're here for you. So thanks again. Join us every Tuesday. We record this on Sundays. We meet at noon Eastern Standard Time. Please join us. Whether or not you want to be on camera, we spend the first, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes 25 or 30 minutes checking in and making sure that everybody's okay, talking about things that we don't talk about on camera. So we start and we record, and then we launch it every Tuesday. Go back and look at each episode, look at the title, see which one reaches out and resonates with you, because there's a lot of wisdom here. There's a lot of good things, and we want you to join this circle. All right. Go to losttravelers.club, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Thank you, Henry. Thanks. Bye-bye,
See you,
everybody.
Dave. Bye, Henry.
Take it easy,
Take
Jeff.
care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Henry.